Hello, friends. This week brought two major pieces of news that affect every single person receiving Social Security in America, and I want to make sure you hear about them directly, because most people haven't. Not from the evening news, not from their bank, not from SSA. The first came out on June 9th and involves a deadline that just moved closer. The second came out yesterday based on the latest inflation numbers, and it's the kind of news that actually puts more money in your pocket, but with a catch you need to understand. Today, I'm breaking both down in plain language, explaining what they actually mean for your specific situation and telling you exactly what to do about each one. Before we get into it, subscribe to this channel right now and turn on the bell. What I'm covering today is breaking as of this week, and this is exactly the kind of thing I track so you don't have to. Subscribe now and let's get into it. Let's start with the news from Monday, June 9th, because this one is about a clock that just moved. Every year, the Treasury Department and the Social Security Administration publish what's called the Trustees Report, an official government document that lays out the financial health of Social Security and tells us how long the money will last. This year's report came out June 9th, and the headline number is 2032. That is when the primary Social Security Retirement Fund, officially called the OASI Trust Fund, is now projected to run out of reserves. Here is why this year's date matters more than previous year's estimates. The depletion date moved forward again. In last year's report, the projected date was the first quarter of 2033. This year, it moved to the fourth quarter of 2032, 1 quarter earlier. That might sound like a small shift, but this is the second consecutive year the date has moved in the wrong direction. And the trustees' own report explains why it moved. The one big, beautiful bill signed into law in 2025 reduced the amount of income tax that Social Security beneficiaries pay on their benefits. That sounds like good news for retirees, and in the short term, it is. But it also means less money flowing back into the system, which accelerates the timeline to depletion. So what actually happens in 2032? This is the part that most of the news coverage gets wrong by being vague. The trust fund running out does not mean Social Security goes away. Social Security will still collect payroll taxes from every working American. What it means is that those incoming payroll taxes alone are only projected to cover 78% of what beneficiaries are owed. Which means if Congress does nothing between now and then, benefits would be automatically cut by 22% for every recipient, regardless of age, health, or how long they've been collecting. On the current average Social Security benefit of $2,026 per month, a 22% cut is $445 less every single month. For someone receiving $1,500, it's $330 less. For someone receiving $2,500, it's $550 less. This is not a projection about what might happen to someone else. This is a projection about every current Social Security recipient, and it is now less than 7 years away. AARP responded on June 9th with a formal statement calling on Congress to take immediate bipartisan action. The American Academy of Actuaries and the Bipartisan Policy Center both issued reports within 24 hours, noting that the window for gradual, manageable reform is narrowing, and that the longer Congress waits, the more drastic the changes required will be when they eventually act. What does this mean for you practically right now? If you are already receiving Social Security, the most important thing to understand is that nothing changes today, tomorrow, or next year. The current benefit system is fully funded through 2032 under current law. This is not an emergency requiring immediate action on your part. What it is information you need so that when you hear politicians talking about Social Security reform over the next few years, and you will hear about it constantly, you understand what the actual stakes are. A 22% benefit cut is not a theoretical number. It is the mathematically projected outcome of inaction under current law. If you have not yet claimed Social Security, this report adds one more factor to the claiming decision. Claiming earlier means you lock in a benefit level before any potential changes. Waiting until 70 means higher monthly payments, but it also means more of your retirement income depends on Congress acting before 2032. Neither approach is clearly right for everyone. It depends on your health, other income, and your assessment of what Congress will actually do. But you deserve to be making that decision with accurate information. And that is what this report provides. Now, let's move to the second piece of news. This one came out yesterday, Thursday, June 13th, based on May inflation data released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Every year, the Social Security Administration announces the next year's cost of living adjustment in October. That adjustment is based on CPI-W, the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners, measured specifically during July, August, and September. The official 2027 COLA won't be announced until October, but independent analysts track the monthly inflation data as it comes in, and they publish early estimates throughout the year so that retirees can see which direction things are heading. This week, those estimates jumped significantly. As of May 2026, the CPI-W is running at 4.2% year over year. That's the highest reading in 3 years, driven primarily by energy costs. Gasoline and utility prices are up sharply due to geopolitical pressures, and food prices continue to climb faster than the headline numbers suggest. Mary Johnson, an independent Social Security and Medicare policy analyst who has tracked COLA calculations for decades, updated her estimate on Thursday to 4.7% and noted there is a considerable likelihood it could climb higher as data continues to come in. The Senior Citizens League, a nonpartisan senior advocacy organization, is currently projecting 3.8%. To put those numbers in context, the 2026 COLA was 2.8%, which added approximately $56 to the average monthly benefit. A 4.7% COLA in 2027 would add approximately $95 to the average monthly benefit, nearly double this year's increase. On a benefit of $2,500, it would add $117.50 per month. On a benefit of $1,500, it would add $70.50. Here is the important nuance, and this is the part I want you to actually remember. A higher COLA sounds like great news, and in dollar terms, it is. But a higher COLA means inflation is rising faster than it was before. The 2.8% COLA you received in January 2026 raised your average benefit by $56. But current May inflation levels mean it actually costs you significantly more per month to maintain the same purchasing power you had a year ago. The check went up $56, but real-world costs went up much faster. The gap between those two numbers is what's quietly shrinking seniors' purchasing power every month. This is the structural problem that a higher 2027 COLA only partially addresses. More money coming in is better than less. But if the cost of groceries, energy, and medical care is rising faster than the adjustment, more retirees end up behind, despite the increase. According to a survey released this week by the Senior Citizens League, 44% of retirees now depend on Social Security for 100% of their income. That number was 39% just 1 year ago. In that environment, the gap between what the COLA covers and what inflation actually costs matters enormously. The practical takeaway on the COLA: the 2027 adjustment is shaping up to be significantly larger than this year's. That is good news in dollar terms, but it is not a reason to make any immediate financial decisions, because the official number won't be set until October, and 3 critical months of inflation data, July, August, and September specifically, will determine the final calculation. If the current inflation trend continues, the adjustment will be meaningful. If energy prices stabilize, it could come in lower. Watch for the official announcement in October. In the meantime, knowing that the trajectory is upward is useful context for any financial planning you're doing right now. So here is the summary for this week. The 2026 Trustees Report, released June 9th, moved the Social Security Trust Fund depletion date forward to the fourth quarter of 2032, 1 quarter earlier than last year. If Congress does not act before then, benefits would be automatically cut by 22% for every recipient. The One Big Beautiful Bill's senior tax provisions accelerated this timeline by reducing income flowing back into the fund. Nothing changes for you today, but the window for gradual reform is now officially under 7 years, and the 2027 COLA is currently projected at 3.8% to 4.7% based on May inflation data, which would nearly double this year's dollar increase. But the final number won't be set until October, and it reflects inflation that is already squeezing purchasing power faster than most annual adjustments can fully offset. Subscribe. Share this with someone who depends on Social Security.